Hello, friends. So, welcome to your YouTube video this week. So, today we're going to talk about capacity. And capacity is probably, this is a big statement, but it might actually be like the most important thing I learned to navigate, to heal. And there's a couple of different parts of capacity that I'm going to talk about. So I'm going to break this up into two videos. This first video, I'm going to talk about just awareness of capacity and why it's important while we heal. And I'm actually speaking pretty specifically-ish to people with chronic fatigue. Most of my clients and most of the people that I work with and most of the people that listen to me have this as sort of a main symptom, this chronic fatigue, what we call in the nervous system world, the freeze response of that parasympathetic nervous system, and it is shut down. It's actually the dorsal, high-tone dorsal part of the branch of the parasympathetic nervous system. I know these are a lot of fancy words, none that you have to know everything about right now in this moment, but it is important to understand some of the theory behind nervous system work. For a lot more theory, I do have links to the courses that I took that absolutely helped me turn lupus around in the description of this video. You can copy and paste them and put them in the browser. And those are from Irene Lyon, who is an amazing source, wealth of knowledge. So when we talk about capacity, when we are healing autoimmune, okay, so let's say we're pretty sick and we are going into shutdown and we're going into this chronic freeze state often, or potentially we're living in this state most of the time, okay? Now, this is why in autoimmune we refer to what we call flares, because we can come out of these sort of like, they're flares, but they're kind of like phases, right? Can come out where we might feel a little more activation, but maybe it's very, very brief, and then we just go into shutdown again. So the question that I would ask anyone who has chronic fatigue is if they could track back their life, were there moments or years or maybe a constant whole parts of their life where they were actually quite activated in their body, okay? Where they're actually, their body did not feel safe, and they were in a fight-flight activated state, okay? So the reason that I say this is because most of the time when we are activated in that fight or flight, within our system, we're sort of outside or growing, I'll say tightly, pushing on our capacity, or we're probably likely even functioning outside of where our capacity actually is. But what we've learned or been programmed to do is sort of hide everything, suck everything in, don't say anything. Maybe it wasn't safe for us to voice our concerns, to voice our pain, to voice our emotions, to cry, to express hurt, physical hurt, emotional hurt. Maybe we grew up in a very dysfunctional family. Maybe our parents were dysregulated and we were managing their symptoms in a large way. And so we had all these things on board. And so what we did was we were sort of outside of capacity, and we were like repressing what was happening. And we weren't able to release to sort of grow more capacity, which is how we grow capacity, is sort of how we release and allow ourselves to sort of move through these big emotions and big feelings. So if we had a lot of unsafety and we had a lot of fight or flight going on in the system, okay? And we were on the edge or outside of our capacity for a long time. At some point, we go into most of us go into a shutdown. Of course, everybody is different and is going to manifest their symptoms in a little bit of a different way. And a lot of people are in what we call functional freeze. And so maybe it doesn't feel like shutdown, but they're just kind of numb, right? They can't really feel emotion anymore. Okay? This is where it gets really kind of nuanced. And we have to really pay attention to the sensations of what we're actually feeling, because a lot of us with chronic symptoms and chronic illness have a lot of cognitive dissonance around actually how we feel, because a lot of us have been gaslit for a long time about what was happening in our body, okay? And whether or not our symptoms were actually real or whether or not our symptoms were abnormal, okay? When we're told what was going on with us is normal, and we get used to sort of living in these states, then we maybe don't know that anything's wrong with us. So we have to start with that following impulse is starting to listen to what is actually happening and get real with that, you know? Really important that not bypassing it as well. So when we're wanting to heal chronic symptoms, the reason why understanding my capacity was so important was because I was constantly going outside of my capacity and then crashing and burning. So this is kind of like adrenal burnout in a lot of ways. They're very similar. I had to understand what my capacity was and start living a little bit more inside of that range, because I could no longer reach those states of complete burnout because I'm a mom and I want my life back. I'm sure most of us, most of you listening to this, feel this way, right? Or can relate. So what I started doing was I started noticing when I was outside of capacity in the moment. So I was checking in. I'm still checking in all the time. Where am I right now? What's going on inside of my system? Is my heart pounding really fast? Am I starting to sweat? Am I feeling really anxious? Am I feeling angry? Sometimes that activation can feel like anger. And it is anger, and underneath it's anger. Are my palms getting sweaty? Sometimes I kind of shake, like if I'm getting really activated, okay? I notice what is happening in my physiology, what is happening in my environment, and I have to find a way to pull myself back, to pull myself together. That's what I was doing in the beginning. If I'm in a safe place now and I'm not with my kids, I will release what I need to release. But let's say I get activated while I'm out and I'm in conversation with somebody or having an argument with somebody, or maybe I'm driving. Or it's another example. Maybe I don't have the capacity for loud restaurants, and my best friend is having a birthday party at a restaurant later at night or whatever, and it's really loud, and there's a lot of people drinking and all the things. And I no longer, let's say I no longer drink, I no longer avoid and resort. This is a whole nother thing that I did, was I got sober, which was very important for me. But when I got sober, I started noticing situations like this, where I would walk into places, and this happens with highly sensitive people as well, which I am. I would walk into places, and once I understood what the nervous system language, I understood that this, just being in this place around this kind of energy, is actually sending me into like fight or flight, like my heart is pounding. If I would go out at night, this is like in the beginning of my healing journey, kind of before I was nervous system informed. And I would just go out to dinner and maybe be out till 11 or 12, and I wouldn't be able to sleep the whole night long. I didn't understand why this was happening. I had to cut out alcohol because I was so sensitive to it. That was something that activated me, highly activated me. I wouldn't sleep after I drank alcohol. But even after I stopped drinking alcohol, I just was going to dinner, like I said, a birthday party or something like that. I wouldn't be able to sleep. I never understood why that was. Now I understand. It's because just that situation, that place activated my system so much, and I likely sat there very uncomfortable and having certain red flags, things going on in my body, anxiety, heart beating fast, maybe feeling hot, all these little signs. I didn't understand any of this, and so I pushed myself to stay. Okay. When I understood the language of nervous system and I understood what my capacity was, and I understood that situations like that were no longer healthy for me, and I'm not saying live in a bubble for the rest of your life. What we want is to grow our nervous system capacity so that we can handle more situations like this, so that we can take on the world more with more regulation, and we can grow and expand in a way that where we're enjoying our life, right? Because what would happen is with a simple dinner that should be pretty harmless, I would be up all night and then I would crash and I would be frozen for days after. So what I had to start doing was understanding people, places, situations, events that were not within my window of tolerance any longer. Or they hadn't been, likely, for a long time. And for a long time, I numbed out with alcohol and drugs. And then for a long time, I didn't, and I was experiencing symptoms still. Then I got to a place where I understood why I was having these symptoms. I understood there were certain things I had to limit myself with until I grew my capacity. And then I can't take on more. Now I can go to dinner with my friends, no problem. I still don't drink. That's a lifestyle choice that I made a long time ago, and I'm sticking by it. But now I can go out to dinner with my friends, no problem, and I can hang and I can come home. And I do take an hour to wind down. I think it's totally normal, right? And then I go to bed and I can sleep just fine. Okay? But that's because I worked on my nervous system and I grew my capacity. And I stopped living outside of my capacity. So a friend of mine gave me this metaphor, and I thought it was really brilliant. She's actually also a client of mine, and I was explaining to her capacity and how in the very beginning when we're sick, we have to understand, learn the ways of the body, the way that our body's telling us. And a lot of this is intuitive. By the way, as we grow nervous system capacity, that intuition starts to really, really build and grow. And we become really tuned in to what is safe, what is not safe, all those things. What is within our windows of tolerance, our capacity, what isn't, and how to work with that. Okay. So this friend gave me this metaphor. She said, when I was breastfeeding, I came across a video of a woman showing how she was pumping. If you just pump these tubes, these like small little tubes of milk every hour or every hour and a half throughout the day, by the end of the week, you will have more milk saved up, significantly more. I can't remember exactly how much, but significantly more milk than you would if you pumped out a whole feeding every 3 hours, which is what she was doing. Now, I pumped. I had plenty of milk. Thank God. But if I had known that, I would never have put myself through. I was definitely outside of my capacity with what I was doing with the whole pumping situation, because that was insane. But that's just a metaphor. We can think about this in all the areas. It's almost like if we have, let's say we are functioning, say we have lupus, we have fibromyalgia, we have Lyme, and we're only be able to function at 40, 50, 60%. We only have that much energy. Like we're not at 100% energy, right? So it's almost like we kind of have to conserve for a little while so that we can kind of extend, let our energy sort of be spaced out and extend so that we don't go into that crash and that burnout. Another analogy was I was training for a marathon years ago in my 20s. I was on a lot of stimulant medications because I had chronic fatigue and I was overriding everything with pharmaceuticals. And I thought running marathons would be really great because I was stuck in hypervigilance. And I read a book about a guy who came up with this method where you run for 3 minutes and you walk for 1 minute. And the 3 minutes that you run, you don't like sprint, you just run your normal pace. And then when you walk your normal pace. You're not actually fast walking. You're just walking, you're doing like a brisk walk. That's actually not important. The people who followed this method actually finished marathons faster than like a very high number of people who ran marathons. Like, there's a wide range of different skilled runners, not skilled runners, people who just walk the whole thing, right? But they finished in a very faster than you would ever think, between 4 and 4.5 hours, which is pretty fast for a marathon. So this is another sort of analogy that I give on how important it is when we're sick to not burn out. And burnout is because we have exhausted our capacity and we are living outside of our range. And when I became keenly aware of what I could take on, what I had capacity for, and what I didn't, everything changed for me when I actually started to listen to what my body needed. I listened to my impulses and I started following that, and I started making decisions around what I knew I had energy for and what I knew I didn't have energy for. Because at the end of the day, I had to have energy for my kids. And they were the ones that were always getting the short end of the stick. So I limited other things so I knew I would have energy for the things that were really important to me. And in the meantime, I did my nervous system work and I grew that capacity. And slowly, inch by inch, over time, I have enough to live a pretty full life. That doesn't mean I don't have days where I know I need more rest. I listen to that and I take it, but it's not weeks. You know what I'm saying? Whew. All right. So that is video 1 on capacity. I hope you find it very well, and I will see you soon for the next video. Bye.